The most cited psychology experiment in history may have never actually shown what we think it did. August 1971, Stanford University, California. A group of psychologists painted the windows of a basement corridor, installed a sliding steel door, and called it a prison. 24 male college students had volunteered for what was advertised as a study on prison life. They were screened for psychological stability. They were randomly divided. Half would be guards, half would be prisoners. The study was designed to run for 2 weeks. It was halted after 6 days. Philip Zimbardo, the lead researcher, reported that the guards had become authoritarian and abusive, that the prisoners had suffered genuine psychological breakdowns, that ordinary, healthy young men had been so consumed by their assigned roles that the line between performance and reality dissolved. The story spread fast. It entered textbooks. It was cited in Senate hearings on prison reform. It inspired films, documentaries, TED Talks. For decades, it was presented as one of the clearest demonstrations psychology had ever produced. Put good people in a bad system, and the system wins. But the closer researchers looked, the more the story shifted. What actually happened inside that basement, and what the experiment truly tells us, is more complicated, more human, and in some ways more interesting than the legend. To understand why the Stanford Prison Experiment captured so much attention, you have to start about a decade earlier, and about 3,000 miles away. In 1963, Stanley Milgram at Yale University published the results of what would become one of the most disturbing studies in behavioral science. Ordinary Americans, prompted by an authority figure in a lab coat, were willing to administer what they believed were dangerous electric shocks to a stranger, simply because someone in a position of authority told them to continue. Milgram's conclusion shook the field. Ordinary situations, not extraordinary personalities, drive extraordinary behavior. Zimbardo had known Milgram since high school. He was drawn to the same question, the power of social context over individual character. His prison study was, in part, an extension of that inquiry. What happens when you assign people not just a task, but an entire identity? The setup was detailed. Prisoners were arrested at their homes by real Palo Alto police officers, booked, blindfolded, and brought to the basement. They were given smocks and stocking caps. They were referred to only by number. Guards were given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, and wooden batons, props chosen specifically to depersonalize and signal authority. Zimbardo himself took on the role of prison superintendent. That decision, as we will see, mattered enormously. The situationist hypothesis, that roles shape behavior more than character does, was already well supported by social psychology. Zimbardo wanted a vivid demonstration, and he got one, perhaps too vivid. The official account described guards who spontaneously began harassing and humiliating prisoners within hours. Prisoners who broke down, screamed, demanded to be released. One participant, prisoner 8612, was released early after what appeared to be a severe emotional crisis. Zimbardo reported that the guards invented their own cruelties, that nobody told them to do what they did, that the situation simply took over. For almost 50 years, that account went largely unchallenged. Then, in 2018, journalist Ben Bloom published an investigation that drew on audio recordings from the original study, interviews with participants, and documents that had not been widely examined. What he found complicated the narrative significantly. One of Bloom's key sources was a recording of Zimbardo's research assistant, David Jaffe, explicitly coaching a guard, telling him to be tougher, more authoritarian, that the guards needed to create a sense of power and dominance if the study was going to work. Participant interviews revealed that some guards had understood what the researchers were hoping to see and performed accordingly. One guard, later identified as Dave Eshelman, told Bloom directly that he had modeled his behavior on a character from a film, that he was acting, that he had believed that was what the study required. And prisoner 8612, the man whose breakdown had become one of the study's most dramatic moments, gave an interview saying his distress was largely performed. He had wanted to leave. He thought acting distraught was the fastest way out. French researcher Thibault Letexier published a full academic analysis in 2019 in the journal American Psychologist, concluding that the guard's behavior was not spontaneous. It was actively shaped by experimenter instruction and expectation. Zimbardo disputed these characterizations. He maintained that the core findings remained valid. But the scientific community began asking a harder question. If the behavior was coached, what exactly had been demonstrated? The experiment had no proper control group. The results were never systematically coded or statistically analyzed in the way modern studies require. It was, by current standards, not a controlled experiment at all. It was closer to an uncontrolled role play that became its own event. Here is where the story gets genuinely interesting. Because debunking the Stanford Prison Experiment does not debunk the question it was trying to answer. The influence of roles, institutions, and authority on human behavior is supported by a wide body of more rigorous research. The Milgram studies, for all their own ethical complications, were replicated with consistent results across multiple countries and decades. Research by Henri Tajfel on intergroup behavior, the minimal group paradigm, showed that people will favor members of an arbitrarily assigned in-group even when the grouping is completely meaningless. We do not need the Stanford study to know that institutions shape people. Prisons, militaries, bureaucracies. The historical record is full of documented cases where ordinary individuals participated in systems of harm, often without explicit orders to do so. What the Stanford experiment actually revealed may be something more specific: how powerfully a scientific frame can transform a staged performance into apparent evidence. Zimbardo was not just a researcher. He was also the prison superintendent, a participant in the drama he was observing. His own role contaminated his ability to observe neutrally. Psychologist Peter Gray, writing in 2013, noted that the study was widely cited not because its methodology was strong, but because its story was compelling. Human beings are vulnerable to vivid narratives. A dramatic 6-day breakdown in a university basement is easier to remember and easier to teach than a carefully controlled study with modest effect sizes and qualified conclusions. The replication crisis in psychology, which accelerated after 2011 with the publication of a large-scale replication effort called the Reproducibility Project, revealed that many classic social psychology findings failed to hold up under rigorous retesting. The Stanford Prison Experiment was never formally replicated, partly because it would be unethical to try. But its problems reflect the same pattern: dramatic results, weak controls, heavy researcher involvement, and a story that was too good to question. That is not a reason to dismiss social psychology. It is a reason to hold it, and ourselves, to a higher standard of honesty about what any single study can actually prove. What does any of this mean for how you move through the world? Not as a reason for cynicism about science. Science is the process of getting things wrong and then correcting course. The Stanford experiment being challenged is not a failure. It is the system working. But there is something personally useful in this story. We are all susceptible to the authority of a good narrative. When a study confirms what we already believed, that people are corruptible, that systems are more powerful than individuals, we absorb it without asking for the receipts. The same is true in reverse. When a study challenges something we want to believe, we scrutinize every detail. The habit worth building is simpler than it sounds. When a psychological finding feels completely obvious or perfectly satisfying, that is exactly the moment to slow down and ask what the study actually measured, who ran it, and whether anyone has tried to replicate it. The situationist insight, that context shapes behavior, remains valuable and well supported. But one of the contexts that shapes behavior most reliably is the story we are told about what is expected of us. That was true for the guards in that basement. And it is true for all of us, every day. Philip Zimbardo spent decades arguing that the experiment proved something real about human nature. His critics spent years arguing it proved something real about the experiment. Both were probably right. Maybe what that basement in 1971 captured most clearly was not how easily ordinary people become cruel when given power, but how easily all of us, researchers included, become the roles we are given when no one is watching closely enough. That is a less cinematic conclusion. It is also perhaps a more honest one. If this kind of honest look at classic psychology is what you come here for, a like and a subscription genuinely help this channel keep making it.